And so you tell the story about how you had started to lose some weight, and then you'd started to get a little bit, you'd stopped drinking soft drinks, and you'd lost a few kg, and then you started getting a little bit more active and walking, and you secretly decided to join a gym. And
yes, that was my great big dirty secret. Nobody could ever know.
Yeah, and then the gym owner said to you, there's not much we can do to help. You've got to do something about your eating. And he introduced you to, Atkins, low carb, high fat, whatever name you want to give it. And that pretty much turned your life upside down. Do you want to talk a bit about what happened there?
Yeah, I think the most amazing thing about that part of my life, it was very much both a physical and a psychological rock bottom for me. At my heaviest, I was 137 kgs, or just over 300 pounds. I'd lost a little bit of weight with the walking, just about 5 kilos over the preceding 6 months or so before I decided I'd take this further, thinking, well, the exercise is working better than diet ever has for me. So let's explore this further. Let's go to a gym. And the reason for this being such a massive secret that I was so determined not to tell anybody about was because I was so afraid that the people would be thinking, oh, here we go again. He's trying again. It's not going to work. And I didn't want to deal with that sort of sense of expectation, which in turn would lead to sort of pressure or anything like that. This was something that I decided I needed to do for myself, so that by not sharing it at that point when I was at my lowest, when I was at my largest, when I was at my worst, that I wasn't going to have to deal with any external pressure. I was already under enough pressure just myself with my own personal situation. So I made this appointment, didn't tell anybody, but assumed that I would be the easiest sell ever. I rock on up, I'm looking awful, and he'd sign me up to a membership, and that will be the end of it. But to his credit, he took a look at me and said, I don't think there's much I can do for you. I could sign you up. You might lose a little bit of weight, but what you really need to do is take ownership of your situation outside of the gym. We need a more holistic solution here. In your case, I think we need to look at what you're eating. And when he proposed that I take a look at this idea of low carb, I was very, very skeptical. Because the idea of low carb and Atkins was something that I'd first been introduced to. This would have been probably 15 years or so earlier, about the early 2000s. I remember doing the rounds in the news, as it does every few years, sort of thing. And at that time, I took notice of it. I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. But, the usual experts all came out and decried as this dangerous, unscientific, unsubstantiated fad diet. Fat clogs your arteries and you'll be dead of a heart attack before you know it. It was supposedly the absolute worst thing that I could do. And so I'd taken that on board, listening to the experts, being a good boy, doing the right thing. And here's somebody now who's telling me that I need to perhaps explore that option again. And I thought, where are you going with this? I couldn't bring myself to believe that there would be any merit to it whatsoever, because, surely there wouldn't have been so much opposition to it in the past if there was ever any real merit to it. What's the go here? But he was so determined that this would be the right solution for me. And so in the end, I said to him, oh, all right, I'll give it a shot. But I had no conviction at all that it would work. In fact, my motivation for getting started was actually pretty unhealthy. I set out basically to prove this guy wrong. I thought, well, the balance of probabilities, I've got an army of experts the world over telling us that low carb doesn't work. Here's this one guy suggesting that it does. I'm going to expose him. I'm going to show him up for the fraud he is. And if I'm going down, I'm going to take this guy with me, because there's no way he can possibly be right. Because if he's right, then that means everybody else is wrong, and that's impossible. So that was my motivation going in. I didn't actually believe that it would work. Colour me shocked, surprised, but in all the good ways, when for the first time in my life I actually started losing a meaningful amount of weight. And even in those first few weeks when I start to see the kilos dropping away, even then I was sort of thinking, oh, this is just a coincidence. This could be anything. It took me a good, couple of months to really come around to accept what was happening to me before my very eyes. The numbers were dropping on the scales. I started at 132 kilos with low carb. That was October 2015. By Christmas, I was down to 122. 10 kilos in a matter of about as many weeks. And really just kept on going from there. But it took a long time to overcome that sentiment that I'd lived with for so long beforehand, that low carb was just the worst possible thing for me to do, when in fact it turned out to be the only option that was ever going to work for me, to the extent that it obviously now has.